Hello friend! Welcome to our newest video today about the tense conflict between Russia and Ukrainian. The Russian T-80 tank has become one of the most sought-after targets for Ukraine's FPV drones. In one particular instance, the Russian crew had no idea that their fate was sealed. They were completely unaware that in just under a minute, they would be wiped out. Suddenly, a powerful explosion tore through the tank, blasting its turret off and leaving it lying on the ground, separated from the main body. This marked the beginning of yet another successful strike for the Ukrainian forces. The precision of the drone attack ensured that the Russian tank was destroyed without posing any danger to Ukrainian troops. These FPV drones, armed with explosive charges, ignited the Russian tanks, and the Russian soldiers had no choice but to abandon these burning wrecks on the battlefield. Once left behind, these tanks became prime targets for more drone attacks, effectively turning them into fuel for Ukraine's war machine. Ukraine has redefined modern warfare. As Russian forces attempt to breach strategic Ukrainian positions, each BMP-2 armored vehicle that rolls onto the battlefield never returns. It is reduced to a smoldering heap of twisted metal on Ukrainian soil. The FPV drones, fitted with shaped explosive charges, have perfected the art of destruction. These drones sneak up on Russian tanks from behind, where their armor is weakest, and deliver devastating blows that trigger massive explosions. Following this wave of destruction, Ukraine's Air Force reconnaissance team from the 26th Brigade continued their relentless pursuit. Armed and ready, the small FPV drones, each carrying an explosive grenade, were capable of taking out even the heaviest of Russian tanks, some weighing as much as 40 tons. In one such engagement, a Russian APC-3 was on a combat mission, firing on Ukrainian trenches. But before it could inflict any significant damage, an FPV drone slipped in from behind, delivering a perfectly aimed strike that left the APC-3 in flames. The Ukrainian forces once again proved to the Russians that their advance would be their last. With each passing hour, more Russian military vehicles were obliterated one by one, leaving only wreckage in their wake. The Ukrainian military's relentless precision strikes have severely crippled the Russian forces. The combination of advanced technology and superior tactics has pushed Russian soldiers and their equipment to the brink. Exhausted and battered, the enemy's manpower and military hardware have been severely depleted. Repeated Ukrainian attacks have left the Russian forces unable to keep up with the evolving dynamics of the battlefield, where every advance is met with crushing resistance. In the next day, a fierce battle unfolded as Ukrainian forces confronted an assault group of Russian occupiers attempting to breach the heavily contested Bermuda Rectangle. The Russian unit, consisting of 20 to 30 infantry soldiers, faced immediate losses as Ukraine's first wave of attacks left several soldiers severely wounded. In desperation, the remaining Russian troops scrambled for cover, seeking refuge in nearby basements. Ukrainian FPV drones, however, continued their surveillance and detected enemies hiding among dry tree branches and other concealed areas. Ukraine wasted no time and launched targeted drone strikes on the enemy's positions. After an intense phase of Russian aggression, new targets were identified, specifically those hiding in the underground basements and trenches surrounding the combat zone. The Ukrainian forces coordinated artillery strikes with aerial drone attacks to ensure complete devastation of the enemy's strongholds. Precision bombing, coupled with strategic artillery fire, was unleashed to guarantee that no Russian soldier emerged alive from their shelters. The Ukrainian K2 battalion is facing an attack from Russian forces, including MTLB armored vehicles. Russia is continuously losing combat equipment in its attempts to breach Ukraine's defensive lines. One MTLB vehicle was destroyed by a Ukrainian drone, while the enemy also struggled in their efforts to retreat. The Russian forces tried to change their route to avoid mines but were still attacked. Russia continues its assault, deploying more vehicles, including tanks and armored vehicles, but without bringing any mine-clearing equipment. Ukraine continues to use drones to strike targets. Despite the enemy's well-laid plans, they still face failure due to Ukrainian attacks. It is evident that Ukraine fully holds the initiative on the battlefield, successfully repelling Russian attacks and driving the invaders off its territory. In the end, Ukrainian drones attempt to track and destroy multiple enemy targets, showcasing the resilience and determination of the defense forces. The Russian military planned an ambush against opposing forces by setting up a minefield along the movement routes of Ukrainian troops. A high-capacity mine barrier was quietly installed overnight to avoid detection by the enemy. However, Ukraine's aerial reconnaissance team was highly effective, with FPV drones constantly used as a radar to scan the combat area. As a result, it was not difficult to detect the Russian minefield. Recognizing the importance of the mine barrier, Ukraine immediately deployed helicopters and improvised explosive devices to clear the enemy's minefield. The FPV drones carried explosives close to the barrier, and once the explosives were accurately dropped in position, smoke from the homemade device began to rise. The FPV drone retreated to a safe distance to avoid the impact of the explosion. As the drone reached safety, the mine barrier exploded, causing a massive blast that shook the open land in the Donetsk region. After the explosion, the FPV drone moved closer to observe. The mine barrier was destroyed, leaving only a few unexploded mines. However, these too were quickly turned into debris, rendering them ineffective in combat. A dramatic scene unfolded as a wounded Russian soldier, struggling to stay upright, used his rifle to brace himself while making his way across an open field dotted with tree stumps, heading back to base. From inside the base, another Russian soldier noticed his comrade's return and stepped outside to check on him. Once he confirmed his injured comrade could make it back, he retreated into the base. Unaware they were being watched, the Russian soldiers became the target of a silent FPV drone that rapidly closed in. In a sudden, powerful strike, an explosion engulfed the area in fire and smoke, completely obliterating the soldiers and their hideout. The surprise attack was a resounding success, wiping out the enemy forces and destroying their temporary shelter in one swift blow.